Everyone, better to turn on the mic, right?
Yeah.
Welcome to the final learning lunch of February. We have Dr. Tiffany Drake with us today. Our learning lunches typically ask one question of our featured speakers, and that is, could you please share your personal and professional journey into higher education?
Yeah.
And so, welcome.
Thanks. Well, thank you for considering me and putting me on your list of fun. So while everybody gets something to eat, please take your time. Yeah, so it's really always nice to come down to the Apita Center and visit with students of all levels and like backgrounds, knowing that we are a primarily white institution. So it's always nice to have a space to come and collaborate and then congregate as well. As Nina shared, my name is Tiffany Drape. I'm an assistant professor in agricultural leadership and community education. And here in the United States, it's not so common for Asian folks to be in agriculture of really any capacity. But I came to the United States through international adoption. I was one of the 160,000-ish Korean adoptees that was sent out of the country, for lack of a better term, back after the Korean War. We all know a little bit about the Korean War, just whether we went to school in the US or elsewhere, we know what happened. How about that as bare line minimum? And so afterwards, the government really wanted to build their GDP. And so they started producing cars. One of their most famous brands, as most of us know, is Kia. And the second GDP grower of their economy after the Korean War was humans. They adopted out about 160,000 of us. Most of us came to the United States with another good portion going to Scandinavia and Europe, Western Europe. I meant to say Eastern Side, Western Europe. So that's where a lot of the adoptees ended up. Some went to other places, but again, when you look at the percentages and the bulk of the kids at that time, most of us ended up here in the United States. What's interesting is as paths to citizenship have changed over the last even just couple decades, and again, you're all old enough to watch some news, that the Chinese adoption, right, was really high for a long time. And so the paths to citizenship, back when my sister and I both came, I have one adopted sister as well. She was born about 2.5 years before me. The citizenship process used to be really straightforward. And it also, I know, and it also used to not have a lot of caveats. But when the Chinese adoptees, and some of you in here may be in that classification, they changed how you could earn citizenship from the time they had all the Korean adoptees coming in from the Chinese adoptees. And so when we look at some of the current events happening, which I know we shouldn't talk about politics, but it's becoming a very real possibility. The Chinese adoptees had two ways to citizenship. Parents, to no faults of their own, often chose the cheaper, faster one that gave you all a passport, but not necessarily naturalized citizenship. And that's where it becomes complicated. Whereas my sister and I were coming, we were at the tail end. I came in 81 and they kind of stopped by the mid 80s. We only had one option, which was straight to naturalized citizenship. I will share it didn't cost nearly what it does today. It wasn't as complicated. And because my sister and I were like literally 2 years old, there was no test because we would have failed. Just throw that out there. So when I do show slides up, I'll show a slide of my sister and our hen box the day we got citizenship from a judge at a federal courthouse, which is also what's coming in the news of if you weren't naturalized at a federal courthouse, they're trying to revoke your citizenship now. And I said, by they, I mean the administration. But again, back during that time, a parent just took their child to where they were told, right? Like it's like taking your child to the doctor if it has a sore throat, right? You go and do it. So it's become really interesting that the administration has now told the folks in DHS or ICE to open up 1 to 200 naturalized citizenship cases every month now, because they're going to start going back through all of the adoptees and naturalized citizens that way. So if you're on any like Korean adoption boards or Chinese adoption boards, it's certainly become a really prominent topic, I guess, for lack of a better term. So when my sister and I came over, the only path was naturalized citizenship. Would have thought that would become a contested issue, right? I know my parents did the thing that they were told to literally do. It also sadly did not cost what it costs today. It was about $1,000 back then for you to become a citizen, which, and even in today's money, if you did the math, is still nothing compared to what we're dealing with now. And so my parents here in the United States were dairy farmers. And so we own about 540 acres, which is very small when you think about scaling how we produce food in this country. And I was just sharing with Nina, the cows sold last weekend and the appraiser has already come and my parents are ready to retire. And so, yes, it is excellent for them and I'm super happy for them. They need to enjoy the life that they have. They're both cognitively very sharp, which if you have someone who's had dementia or something in your family, you know that just turns into a lot of labor for family. And so they are very excited to do what they want for a little while. And my sister and I both want that for them. My sister came over about 2 years before I did. She was born in 1978. She turned 48 yesterday. So I called her and her four-year-old and 3-year-old were like, Mommy, what's for dinner? And she's like, all right, I gotta go. So we'll celebrate. They were getting takeout. So I'll see her next weekend. So I told her I'd take her to lunch or something, to celebrate while the kids were at school/daycare for the day. So she and I both got raised on a dairy farm. We grew up working, physically working, but we also grew up in organizations. Some of you hang around here in the summer have seen the Blue Jackets, sometimes the FFA students, and then the 4-H students. And so, we grew up in small town, upstate New York. We were the only two minorities in our whole school because the schools districts are really small. To help scale that for some of you, I graduated with 35 other kids. So like small. Is it a contest to see who can be the small? No. But again, these were extremely small communities and there's pros and cons to that as well. I'm a product of the community college system or the SUNY system, the State Universities of New York. They can offer super affordable education for almost $0, which was the big draw for my family. They have those programs here in Virginia now too. I work on several of them, not just from like your FAFSA. And so, we were really fortunate that we had access to education within 30 minutes. Because again, SUNY is set up in a way, there's 64 of them across the state. So again, there's just one within an hour of most people, right? So if you need to get to, it's very accessible, which is the goal. I've since continued to partner with SUNY, doing some external reviews for them now in this position. So it's been kind of neat to see how they've also evolved and adapted to like demographic changes, enrollment cliffs, changing degrees and majors, again, whether we always agree with it or not, right? Just trying to make sure that the students can access a really good education for as cheap as possible in a good way, in that respect. So I went to SUNY first and community college, and then New York also has great MOUs with all the 4-year institutions. And that one of those institutions was Cornell University. As long as you maintained a 275, you had an automatic transfer agreement. And again, from a financial perspective, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't go wrong. So your girl did hit 275. At 18, you're like, I don't know. Do I have to go to class? So I was like, yes. And earn a bachelor's and a master's from Cornell University. I went on to teach public school. And so in New York State, the law, not me, is you have to have a master's degree to teach. So you either choose to stay or you go to night school or online now. Back in the day, I chose to just stay for the extra year. The internet was brand new. I am going to date myself. I remember getting that coveted EDU email account so I could join Facebook. Okay, that's just what we did. So I did. I was really fortunate. And again, Ithaca was 90 minutes from where I grew up. So I got in number one, right? Like there's the first hurdle. And then yes, was able to get both a bachelor's and master's there. I was a public school teacher for 5 years. Afterwards, I taught grades 6 through 12. I taught ag science, go figure, growing up on a big old farm. And so I taught kids everything from how to grow plants to how to weld, which is really fun. I'm less good at plumbing and electrical. And I will not touch my garbage disposal because water and electricity do not bring me joy together. So there are some things in life I still won't, I will call somebody and I'm thankful that I can do that. So I taught for 5 years and then in our field, you go work first and then you go back for your last degree, right? Like if that's choice that you want to make. And so my life worked out really well in terms of my divorce was getting finalized, my house sold, life happens when you become an adult. And I got this great offer from my now colleague, who was my old advisor, to come back here for my PhD. So they recruited me here. And so some of you may come back for a graduate degree someday to here another place. Don't pay for your PhD. That's the best piece of advice I got from my old business manager at my last public school I taught at for 4 years. The other cool thing about teaching in upstate or New York in general, not just upstate, is my students, I could go to a class every year at a SUNY and my students could get college credits by taking the classes that I taught. So again, some of these price tags will make you go, ooh, but I used to teach my classes for $50 a credit. So a student could come out for $150 and get up to 12 credits by the time they finish high school. So again, it took care of a semester, right? Essentially of gen ed credits if they, again, were choosing to go to either community college, whatever. I know it was like throwing $5 out your window on a sunny day. I know. I'm so sorry. I didn't make those rules and I don't set the prices now. I apologize. But it was a great way to offer access to rural areas, right? I had to go drive 2 hours for professional development. And the trade-off was if a student wanted to take that extra credit and do those extra things in my class, they could. If they didn't want to, there's no penalty, right? Like they didn't, but it was a matter of just saying, this is offered. I can recall several students that did do it, right? Like took my classes for the extra curriculum and then for the, what I would call reduced fee, credits. And it worked out really well. They would enter community college or again, a 4-year institution and have a semester done already. We didn't have access to AP and some other things where I used to teach. It just wasn't as common back then. And now I know they were just talking about DBQs and SEQs and some of these, they all end with Q. It seems in AP classes and one of my group chats about something happened with AP history this week. I don't know at the public school. I'm so sorry. I never had, every time someone says something Q, I'm like, is it barbecue? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay. And so, yeah, I came back to school in 2008. My now old advisor, now colleague in the department, recruited me because she had taken a job down here. And so I moved to Blacksburg and I joke with folks that it's like my Gilligan's Island. I was supposed to go on a 3-hour cruise and I never left. I like it here though. So I finished my degree in 11 at the end of the last big financial recession. I know it's going to be fine. It doesn't feel good and I'm aware. And took a job working an NSF grant with the College of Engineering and the College of Liberal Arts. And it was really fun because I got to go hang out with middle schoolers again. So that was the fun part for me because I already done that. I do like middle schoolers. Nobody else would say that in the room. I'm 100% sure of it, but I do. And so I was really fortunate. Again, it was a great job for me, right? It fit my personality. It was building like solar cars and stuff for them in after school settings. So it wasn't so much like, do these work, right? Like it was, why didn't it go, right? Like, or did you not charge the solar panels enough? And again, they're middle school kids. And so over time, my position has changed. I went back to the College of Ag and Life Sciences 3 years after I finished my PhD. I did miss agriculture as much as other people would not miss it. But I can say that leaving the College of Ag was also really good for my career. Those engineers, they know how to be really aggressive about research and publishing and some of these other things that, again, I just didn't get that training, not because my program was bad, but because there's just no time. And so it really helped me reframe my thinking on some different things. Did I ever intend to become a college professor? No. Just to be very clear, I had told my mother when I got my master's, before I even took my first teaching job, maybe I'll go back someday. But that was it. That was the conversation. And like a good parent, she went, okay, right? Like as all of our parents, like, because what else are you gonna say when the kid's 22, right? Like you're like, all right, like sure. But who would have thought? And so again, sometimes the universe works even if you're not really paying attention to it. So I've really had a good time down here. I know we joke that it's a default that you have to like the outdoors, but I really do like the outdoors. I do hike a lot, and I paddle board almost time. So I have an inflatable one I keep in the back of my car once the weather gets warm. And so if I'm done at like 2 p.m. or something, right? Like all I could do is just run home, change real quick and, spray some sunscreen down and head out for a few hours. So I've been really fortunate there. When USAID was still in existence, again, I've been very fortunate to travel on behalf of the United States. And then I had a Fulbright in 2022, and I went and lived in Uzbekistan for the summer, which again was super cool, different, but cool. And I've been able to go all over the world for work and also now fun as well. Last year, my mom had always said she wanted to go hike Machu Picchu before she couldn't. She's 75. And so my sister, her, and I all went to Machu Picchu last year and hiked part of the Inca Trail. The altitude is real. Yeah. If anyone wants to go to your doctor and get the meds. It will knock you out. And I don't mean that like the Rocky movie. My sister chose to not take her med, and then she paid some consequences for several things. So it's pretty high up there. And so again, we've been really fortunate. But yeah, and for USAID and for ag development work, I've been able to go to Guinea, which is right below Senegal, in West Africa, Nepal for working with 4-H and youth programming. And then where else have I been? Uzbekistan and then Kenya, and Rwanda. Sorry, I'm just trying to now as well to do some work. And that was on behalf of the college here back in 2019. So it's been a really rewarding career. What I do here at Virginia Tech now, some things that I really like doing, I'm a research and teaching faculty, like so many of the folks that I know you run across every day. The bulk of my work now is looking at how do we keep people in careers in ag and the life sciences. And I do that through research, but also program evaluation. So a lot of times you'll see people like me walking around at your projects and like some of the programs you run. We're trying to figure out what's the value of holding space for different groups of people, from veterans to students to, again, almost anyone. And I look at how do we keep them in careers in ag and the life sciences. We have huge shortages in agriculture, anywhere right around 100,000 openings a year go left unfilled for a variety of reasons. Some are to no one's fault at this point. And then obviously I'm still teaching as well. I teach mostly graduate students now, but I also have undergraduate researchers all the time in my lab to help me with a lot of qualitative data analysis. So if you or anyone you know is looking for a job next year and you're not graduating, I'm always hiring students to help me lighten my labor load. I always tell students it's not hard, but it's time. And you are compensated hourly for that as well. So I will send that around come August because one of my students is graduating and he already has a job. How dare he? I know, become a productive member of society. And he already looked at apartments and came in last week and goes, why is it so expensive to exist? And I was like, oh. He was adorable. Like, trouble, Dr. Graham. And I said, I'm so sorry. He goes, I thought I was done with roommates. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And he's an engineer. He's a civil engineer.
Right, or do I go to the hospital?
Right? So he was just like, I guess I could do one roommate. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, Alex. He was just really endearing. He's like, ugh. He looked pretty defeated, unfortunately. So yeah, we're doing a lot of good things. Our department in the College of Ag is the only one who studies humans. So if you like staring awkwardly at other humans, or working with them not awkwardly, that's, you know, some of the things that we do. Our department also does things like prepare teachers to go into teaching careers, like certification, right, for education. And we also have a huge arm about leadership and leadership development. Because again, those workforce skills, or we like to call them soft skills. When you look at a lot of the data coming out on Gen Z entering the workforce, some of the areas that are always, you know, in need of some more coaching and mentoring are some of those soft skills. You and I can joke about like the Gen Z stare and some of these other things, but when we talk, yeah, how do we work in teams? How do we collaborate? How do we, you know, learn how to manage our time, which is super important. We have a leadership core in our department that can help students, again, just navigate some of those challenges, but also practice, right? The skills. That's why I always hire undergrads, because it's practice for them. It doesn't bother me. You know, like most of the time, I'm like, did you log your hours in Banner, right? Like, did you push them to get approved? You can log so many hours, but if you don't push them, I can't pay you. And then they're like, oh, right. Let me log back in with Duo Mobile, right? Do you want money? Like, yes. And so sometimes that is why we come to university, right, to practice some of those skills. So there's a longer summary that I usually like to give. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have about career choice, or also just how do we show up in spaces that have dominance in other areas, or in areas that we may not have expertise in yet. But again, in our field, we're trying to find experts to help build teams all the time. So to help us build out for either grants or for other collaborations. So there's a lot of openness. My only claim to fame, I should have made a slide. Bill Nye was my teacher in college. Bill Nye's Cornell alumni. I can open my computer here in a second. I do have a slide of him with me. So Bill Nye was a Cornell graduate back in the day, and you can Google it if you have your machine open or your phone. And so before the internet, when he was just doing the Disney show, right, like the Bill Nye the Science Guy, he would come back to Ithaca every fall for half a semester at least. And you just see him walking around, right? Like he'd be like, if he just walked right like by outside these classrooms, you're like, oh, Bill's here. So he would come back every fall and teach. He would give public lectures too, but he was one of Carl Sagan's students, right? That guy, the blue dot guy, right? So he would just hang out. Like you'd see him in the dining, again, be like going over to ABP or, you know, and get a thing of soup. So he lectured for my class. I was in grad school at that point. So he taught my teaching methods class. And so when we break for a second, I'll open my computer. We're not on each other's holiday card list or anything anymore. But he was really great at saying, like, how do we keep making things engaging for students? That was his whole thing. And for those of you who grew up watching him online, on, you know, whatever, I'm not judging at this point. I used to show him to my students in 8th grade agriculture class because he had a great bit on genetically modified organisms. He was a much better teacher than I was, right? Like after a certain point, let's just throw in a DVD, right? Like, because he did a better job. He had fancy graphics and stuff. We're a one person show sometimes. So that is literally my only claim to fame is Bill Nye was my faculty. I don't think he goes back to Ithaca nearly as often anymore. He's also much busier and he's older, but he doesn't seem to be slowing down at all. Anytime I look at his stuff online, he's still doing interviews. He's still out very front and center. I think Neil deGrasse Tyson has kind of taken some of that role in a good way in science communication. And obviously some other women as well. But yeah, he was my professor when I was in undergrad in my grad program. So
Thank you.
it was fun.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a time where we open it up to students or attendees for questions. Questions before I start?
I was actually
Yeah.
curious, you're working in a, yeah, no worries.
I'm listening. I promise.
You're working in an environment that's mainly dominated by not only men,
Yeah.
but white men.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, like, you've probably come across certain situations where there's like racial profiling, sexism.
Yes.
And, I'm also going into a workforce that's dominated by white men who are sexist and racist. And I was wondering how you overcame those situations and how you were able to come out of those situations as a grown adult around people who act like children.
I know. I'm so sorry. That's a great question. And so I'll repeat it because I know the room is big. I'm sorry it's not bigger. There's Bill and I.
Oh my God.
So the question was, how do you handle or, interact with folks who maybe are in your field, right? And so we try to separate work from work, right? And home from home,
Yeah.
first off. And sometimes it's subtle and sometimes it's very obvious. This happened less than a month ago. I'm PIing a grant and somebody on the grant tried to throw me off my own grant because they said I was being difficult. And I said, challenge accepted. My department chair also had to help me, but sometimes, we do need that. We do need to phone a friend. Sometimes it is our boss. I know for me, other people don't see it. I see it, right? Because they don't have to see it. So I think that's the first thing. I do try to always give people the benefit of the doubt first and foremost, right? Like we are getting up and doing the best we can every day. And I do firmly believe that most of us are doing that, right? Like whatever that looks like, it's not always going to be 100% every day. I don't think, especially in white collar professions, that we're always waking up and all air like choosing that kind of,
Yeah.
I don't think we are, but unfortunately it does tend to come out. And so sometimes some of that it does play into that stereotype. I have to be twice as good for half as much, unfortunately. And that is a shame. And I don't know how to fix that single-handedly, right? Like it's not going to happen in this lifetime. But what I can tell you is if you know that you're doing good work and it's been documented and communicated, right? Like then you go back to the work. What I did with this particular colleague was I went back to the budget justification, the paperwork, and said, you said you were going to do these things on this project. Let's talk about that. You're taking money.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Right? I'm taking so much less money on this as the TI. My funding is for our graduate student, which is fair. So I said, tell me, what are you going to do? Right? And so it was a really quick way to go back to all this paperwork that we have to submit for all this funding and such. So if you're going to try and push me off of my own project that I literally was asked to lead, you're going to need to also then go back and explain to the funder why you felt as though this was egregious enough to kick the person they actually asked to be off their own project.
Yeah.
They backed down respectfully, and I'm glad they also got some good mentoring and guidance from whoever they are working with. But then we got a request to meet with that person's boss.
Oh.
And that's what I did. I asked my department chair to join me on that Zoom, and it was very awkward. But it was necessary to
Yeah.
lay out some of these, the conflict, to try and alleviate that conflict, because that's really what this had unintentionally turned into. So I'd say document things, right? Your labor, your contributions, and is pithy or catty, right? Like as it sounded, going back to all that paperwork we have to submit when we go after all these projects. That's actually one of the biggest things I leaned on was, you said you want to take all this funding and then you don't want me on it, even though the funder asked me to lead it. So now you're going to have to tell us why your rationale for why you think
Yeah.
that's appropriate. It's kind of, it does, it's not fun.
Mm.
I try not to take it personally from the standpoint of, did this person do this to me because I'm a not white person? Or were they also just trying to work through some stuff that's not my problem?
Yeah, because it's hard to differentiate why people make the decisions that they do, especially if you're outwardly a person of color. It's like, did they do this to target me or is it just them?
I think the other thing too is it's ego.
Yeah.
And that doesn't know a gender, that doesn't know an ethnicity, that doesn't know an identity. It was this person's ego. They got a little big for their britches and thought they could kind of usurp. And I'm aware of how I present to the world. I'm sometimes frazzled and disorganized, but in the background, right? Like, yeah, especially with some of this paperwork stuff that we have to do. It's not even me, right? Like it's like literally the university and the Fed say, like, here's these things you have to do. And so that was a really nice way for me to be able to go, all right, so if you want to kick me off my own project and take the money, because this person had also said to me on the phone, well, I don't plan on doing a lot. I'm just here to represent this entity. I was like, oh boy, right? Maybe it is because I grew up on a farm. We get together and we do work, right? Like if you say you're gonna do some labor, it's not shoveling manure, which is what I did grow up doing, but this is not $5, right? Like this is tens of thousands of dollars. And so sometimes we can go back to that digital now paper trail to help us out.
Yeah,
some.
thankfully.
Yeah. And if it ends up happening again, which I don't think it will in this particular instance, then we can revisit some of these things too. I don't think it'll be a problem.
Hopefully. Yeah.
The project starts with the funder and all the partners Tuesday morning, so it better not. It's fine. So I think it sounds very stereotypical. But like,
Just keeping it separated.
yes, but also Michelle Obama once said, like, you know, when they go low, we go high.
Mhm.
And I'm not talking about like always taking the high road, but I think what she meant, and this is my interpretation of it, so if you disagree with me, I'm fine with that, is you just don't forget why you're there, the purpose of it. The purpose of the work that we wanted to do together actually was giving free community college to students in Southwest Virginia. That's the project, right? Like, and that's what I wake up for. I don't wake up for whatever she was going through. She's a full-fledged adult who can manage her own feelings, right? Allegedly, I can too most of the time, right? Like, but again, I get it. We all make mistakes. And so I wake up and I go, the goal of getting this project was to help understand the value of offering students access to last money out education, right? Whether they want to become a truck driver, a welder, a CNA, or matriculate to a four-year university, right? This particular program I'm thinking of is covering all those programs, but basically anything within 2 community college systems down in Southwest Virginia. So again, it sounds very cliche and I'm aware, but it was really me going, why did I sign up for this? What's the purpose of it? And now I can choose my attitude too. My old high school principal used to say, every day you wake up and you choose your own attitude. Stuff happens, no doubt, right? You can go out and say, oh, someone bumped the fender in my car, right? Like, duh. But at the end of the day, you choose your own attitude about it. And I didn't understand it when I was 25, but I understand it now. He's great. He's doing great. Of like, that's why I wake up. The purpose of that was not to have a conflict with this other equivalent adult. It was to say, we need to go out and help these stakeholders understand why offering free access to education is so important to students of all shapes and sizes. Again, regardless of the degree or, you know, whatever program they want to get. And I have 2 projects like that. And again, they just make me very happy on the inside, frankly. I wish I could hang out with them more because community colleges in general in this state offer way beyond education. One of the community colleges I work with offer programs for like foster kids who haven't quite aged out of the system, but are on the cusp of turning 18. Again, it happens. And so it's like they can come to this other community college, different project, and get support, get help, right? If they, because sometimes they don't have those built in at home, or they have aged out, been kicked out, removed, you know, from the foster placement they're in because they're 18, and now they just need access to different resources that they don't have a parent or a caretaker at home to give them, right? They're in their first apartment, they're in some kind of, you know, transitional housing. They can come to this other community college and sit with people and get help, right? Like whether it's making a budget, applying for jobs, learning how to click through all the portals of things, not right when we're applying, figure out how to make a resume that's not going to get killed by AI and automatic tracking system, right? Like, so again, there's other things that can be really important. So whenever bad things happen, or again, just not positive interactions happen, what's the purpose of this work? Why did we all get together to originally do this? And I also cannot control anyone else, right? Like I cannot control anyone else's behavior, mostly my own, most of the time. And then other times I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't really say that to them. Right? Like, and then we can, you know, always circle back to it. It's a great question.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions?
I had a question. How did the environments of your jobs change, like depending on which job you had? Like whether it's just like the social environment, the environment you were working in, like where were you working, how were you getting to work? So how did it change from job to job?
Yeah. So when I was teaching, well, growing up on a farm it is literally the stereotype. There's 200 cows. Cows are literally our best friends. So just we'll preface that. You know, so because it was so rural, we grew up pretty poor. But what was interesting about growing up in upstate New York is everyone around us was the same kind of poor. So we never knew that we were missing out on anything. So when you talk about environment, I did not realize how many advantages I had, or also how many things I did not have, simply because I didn't have access to until I went to Cornell. So Kumon School. Some of you are like, you went to therapy for a year for that. I didn't even know it existed. Because we just didn't have it, right? It just didn't exist in upstate New York. There's so no Asians to drive to learning centers. Now every time I drive someone in Northern Virginia, I'm like, worksheets. I have friends who did, they're like, no. And then, so some of my other friends who are Asian are also like, we got PhDs in spite of not going to Kumon school. So, you know, just running jokes about, you know, extra tutoring and things. So I will say growing up in that environment, we didn't know any different, right? Like a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. Like, I don't know. So I actually wasn't even around a lot of other Asian people until I went to Cornell. And I remember the first time I smelled sesame oil burning. I went to someone's house to have dinner, right? Someone invited us over, you know, potlucky type stuff. I was like, oh, what is that? My parents tried. They're white people from Massachusetts and upstate, right? Like they did a great job raising us, but that just wasn't their reality. And I will never be mad at them. To this day, I do respect that my mom tried, right? Like her goal was to raise children to be productive members of society, right? Like not serial killers, right? Like, which again, most of our parents have achieved that. And I love that for all of us. But they tried, but again, so we were always plugged into like the adoption agency and stuff because they always had events. Because again, at that time, there's so many kids coming over from, seriously, thousands of them a year were coming. And my mom even remembers the day she picked me up at JFK. You could walk right to the gate back. You know, there's no TSA. You could literally walk in the airport and go right to the gate and wait for the flight that was coming in. So that environment, again, because there's no other Asian, Black, brown, anybody around, because we just grew up in such a rural area, we didn't know any different. I knew that we didn't look like everyone else because one time we went to Niagara Falls and some Chinese tourists tried to talk to my grandmother about me. And I was holding her hand, you know, because when you're small. And my grandmother kept saying, she's not Chinese. Like she's just she's not Chinese, she's Korean. But when we're small and adorable, sometimes we do look alike, okay? That, you know, this poor woman was trying to speak Mandarin to me, and I was just holding my grandma, you know, like you're like, and my grandma's like, no, she's Korean. And I was like, all right. So I never thought that much about it, honestly. And I never experienced direct racism until I was in middle school. Kid named Steve. He picked on me in the lunchroom, and I remember I went to 8th grade history crying. I was just so upset by Mr. Ford, the teacher. Again, we would never be allowed to do this now. Why are you crying? And I, you know, when you're crying, you're like cry talking, right? Like, cause you're, you know, upset. And he got the gist of it, Jim Ford, and Steve came down to class afterward, and we would get in so much trouble now. He humiliated Steven in front of the whole class for saying racist stuff to me. Steve asked me to the prom a couple years later, and I told him no. So that worked out fine for everybody. You know, I do remember Steven. I remember Steven being made to cry in 8th grade history class with Mr. Ford. But I think for the environment, I was never around a lot of Asian people until I went to Cornell. And then I realized how in over my head I was academically, socioeconomically. And it's fine. It happens. You know, why am I holding 2 jobs down and these kids are getting flown in their private jets home for the weekend, right? Like there's a huge discrepancy. So in some ways, I'm really glad that it was ramped up and not like a fire hose all at once. But again, I really appreciated then that, right? Like, because these were also some of the smartest, talented kids that ever, regardless of ethnicities and genders and things. It's like, oh, you got to level up now. I was tutoring 4 days a week for calculus, right? Like to get a D. But I got that dang D. When I was teaching, New York State is dominated in ag science by women. So the majority of teachers in New York for the field I'm in are women. So then again, that didn't matter. Ethnicity, identity, right? Like women, it's all women teaching in New York, not all, but it's like 80 some % women. So that was, you're in good company. it's the men who are like, there's 4 of us, and you're like, yeah. There is. You need a male chaperone, you have a limited pool. And so even coming down here for graduate school, if you travel on Route 81 enough, please don't. They finally just took down the Mason-Dixon line signs since I moved down here. Before you used to cross from Pennsylvania to Maryland, right on 81, there used to be a sign still that said Mason-Dixon line. They've taken it down. I moved here in 08, so it's been a minute, but again, they've since taken that down. But I remember coming down here the first day I was in grad school, a woman now who I would be friendly with looked at me and said, "You got one of those names no one can pronounce?" And I just remember I looked at her and said, "I don't know what you mean." Like, the department had heard her and reprimanded her, which I found out several years later. Like, we don't do that. And so it's just been really interesting in terms of environment. But I think in terms of like gender and equity there's never been a problem for me. I've not encountered that. In terms of, there's more bench scientists of Asian and again, just different ethnicities and backgrounds and just places where we come from and things like that in the College of Ag. So again, there's never been problems, I guess, if that's what you would call them in that regard. But again, there's some very poignant moments that I remember, like 8th grade, where I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about, right? But then I remember going to Ithaca, and this kid, I was in a group project, let me down one more time, right? I was the weak person in that particular group project, and I just remember him talking about having private tutors, and again, we can joke about Kumon school, but like having access to just different things that just weren't even on our radar, right? Like at all. And it was like, this is what they're talking, right? Like, I don't think I would have grasped that when I was 12 or 13, right? Like, because again, we were around other people from a highly agrarian, agriculturally based society. So in that regard, we were kind of all similar across socioeconomic level, not necessarily ethnicity.
Thank you. Someone else want to ask questions?
You get it, Dr. Hall.
I'm curious because whenever I thought of it, like when we talked about you being an ag, I really did think that you were talking about farming and not being like what you were saying, that you were interacting with people
Yeah.
all the time. I'm always thinking you're interacting with cows because you talk about
I
cows. a lot.
prefer them. Most of the time.
So what are some myths that people might have
Yeah.
about your department and what is sort of the reality?
Yeah, I think agriculture, generally speaking, is we have a lot of these notions of like the bucolic red barn with the green hillside, right? Like, for a long time we used to say it used to be cows, sows, and plows, which is very much like an FFA thing. And now it's really moved to more like beakers, speakers, and job seekers, right? Like, which again is not an uncommon thing for everybody in this room. You want a job someday. I know you all do. And so I think, yes, there is still a lot of that happening, right? How do we become more efficient? How do we produce food to scale, right? Monocropping, diversification, and those things. But also there's a whole component of agriculture, generally speaking, that is, you can invent the best thing ever, but if you can't get someone to adopt it, what did you just do with all that? We saw that with like things like the COVID vaccine. They invented this thing that would help you probably, right, like reduce your mortality, but we couldn't convince people to take it because we made it very political. And so agriculture, much like most fields, operates that same way. So again, we could develop the fastest growing, we could fix orange blight in Florida, but if we can't convince people that the oranges are safe and consumable, right? Like, or worth the price in the grocery store, it's sumo orange season, right? Like, what's the whole point of doing that? Right? If we can't convince people to do that. So in our department and in our field, generally speaking, some of that labor is our bench scientists will partner with a department like ours to help then work with people, whether it's producers, consumers, other stakeholders involved, to say, how do I show the value of this? Or how do I help people adopt it? Or at least generally not outright reject it. We've also seen that as well. And we saw things in like golden rice. And when Monsanto first developed frost-tolerant tomatoes with fish genes, those were really poorly received because they didn't communicate it well. They thought we were growing frankenfood, like they thought we were growing a sardine in everyone's tomatoes, whereas we just taken a gene out, right? Like to help them tolerate frost, right? Like which we get here in Virginia as well. So I think that there's some misconceptions there about what agriculture does, generally speaking. But again, we see certain images like, again, the John Deere tractors, or right, like the Budweiser Clydesdales, all these things, the big trucks. those ag tech kids. They're big trucks. But at the same time, it is a lot more than that. Because again, we can invent the best thing ever, and you can think about examples, right? Like just readily and go, yeah, if I can't convince someone that's safe, if I told everybody that crab rangoon was going to poison you, right? Like you either need to show me the evidence or, right, like refute that in some way. MSG, if we're talking to Asian culture, right, like is really common, right, for receiving a bad rap. Even though MSG is naturally occurring in most of our fruits and vegetables, it's in almost every potato chip, another like deep fried snack in a bag that we find there. It's in Doritos, but yet people will still say, oh, MSG gives me a headache. No, it doesn't. It doesn't, right? Like it's literally because you're eating a poop ton of salt. Oh, no, it's not because of the MSG. You can't eat a whole bag of Lay's and expect not to feel not great, right? Like sometimes the Doritos are delicious, but they're, not good for you. So I think in agriculture, it's not just the cow, sow, plow kind of mantra. It really is this super advanced. And it's in fields that we don't think about, like Caterpillar, the big equipment that we'll see, like with all the building construction. It's a huge agricultural industry. I have a cousin who didn't go to college. He went to VOTEC or CTE. He makes more money than I do, and I'm a little mad at him because he's like 25. He became a certified electrician at 18. He installs generators all over the Northeast now, which is how you can buy a brand new truck for cash. Because he installs Generac generators all over the Northeast for storms, outages, right? Like for alternative power sources. And all those could fall into agricultural careers as well. So it's pretty broad.
You. Anybody else have questions? Right. Jump in still with more questions. Let's see. My next one is my students are always looking for jobs.
Yeah,
Job
oh, good.
opportunities. What's your advice to them, especially nowadays when I think students are realizing they actually have to pivot in terms of majors and whatnot too? Like what do you see is sort of taking place?
Yeah.
In terms of that?
Yeah, I think, we have AI, right? Like we all are again doom scrolling, and seeing similar things maybe from different angles, right? Like who's showing up on my For You page is not the same as yours, but vice versa. Sometimes it is as well. And so I'll go back to those workforce development skills, those soft skills. If you're willing to learn almost anything, but you won't show up, what's the point, right? I always tell my students that work for me for money, for credit, my grad students, I can teach you everything you need to know, give or take a little bit. But if you won't show up and clock in literally and figuratively, I can't, right? And so sometimes it is learning how to communicate differently. And again, you have people in your life, I'm sure you can all think about it. You all hate email. I respect that, right? Like I'm good with that. All of the folks that work with me, especially my undergrads, I'll text them. I know they're not checking their email for 3 days. And that's fine, right? But again, if they're in class or something, it's a different conversation. But again, some of it is figuring out how to meet people where they're at. And we can make jokes about boomers and Gen X, right? Like I love all that for all of us. But if you're working for somebody in a different generation than you, which most of you will, just because youth is wonderful, then you have to go, how does X, Y, and Z like to be communicated with, right? Like for better or worse, as long as it's not exploitive, way after outright, like respectfully, fulfilling those contractual things. But I think really some of it falls back to those workplace skills, honestly. And it's okay to say, I don't know is a perfectly fine answer sometimes. Even here, we have IT come out and fix our computers, right? I had a young man who said, I just got my degree in December. I said, cool, this was last week. I said, here's the problems I'm having. We have to put in tickets to 4Health and stuff, right? He goes, I fixed one problem. I do not have the skill set yet to fix the second one. Thanks for telling me. What should I do? Let's put another ticket back in, right, to the 4Help system. I'd rather have that than him go, well, I just don't know how to do it and leave. At least he told me, right? Like, and so again, some of that is that the humbleness, or again, putting the chip on our shoulder away for a second to go, I need to learn these things. And it's going to change throughout your career. I was telling my department head this last year, I need different skills now than I did when I finished grad school in 2011. I had a postdoc, was really difficult a couple years ago. I went back to school at Michigan State School of Business to take some classes on like HRE, people-y kind of stuff, because I just didn't have those skills, right? And I needed them. This last year, I needed different skills in like survey and statistics. That's what I was in Arizona for last week, to get some help on that. So again, some of it's also a growth mindset, or being open to say, I don't have those skills. Where can I learn them? Right? Again, we have this beautiful thing called the internet now, Or again, we can have access to a lot of information all at once, and then the skill is siphoning through what we need, right? Like you and I can go down a rabbit hole shopping for fill in the blank all day long, right? Shoes, sweaters, maybe the weather's getting good, right? Like spring break, 2026, whatever. But if I need a specific skill, right? Like, or I know that I'm deficient, or my mentor, right, like has pointed that out to me, then I go, well, where can I help myself a little bit? Or who can I ask to help me figure out those skills? When I verbalized I need some different skills for research methods, I went to one of my mentors, I sent her an email, said, hey, do you know anything about, where I can get these advanced skills and statistics and surveys and she goes, oh, here's some suggestions, and I'd asked enough people where I could get that. So some of that is just that willingness to go, I don't know something. But then also the workplace or the soft skills of going, if y'all don't show up, nothing happens, right? I really don't like this whole I manifested it thing. No, you work your ass off. That's how you manifest. I don't know what manifesting really is. If we just going home and wishing, like, I don't know, throw a coin in the Trevi fountain. I don't know. But again, sometimes it really is the labor, and sometimes you won't always know it when you're in it, which unfortunately is not great either. But you come out the end and go, oh, okay, that did work itself out. So sometimes it is those workforce skills. I hired a student once. She would not show up to the weekly meetings. I was paying her money. I finally said to her, girl, you good? Right? Like, she's like, yeah. I'm like, you gonna come next week for your weekly meeting? Yeah. And then she wouldn't come again. And I'd be like, hey, are you okay? Like, are you in a ditch? Right? Are you okay? First and foremost, right? And then, yeah, I don't think I should work for you. I'm like, noted. Thanks. But again, sometimes, again, literally showing up is sometimes the best thing you can start with if you don't know what else to do next. Yeah, whether it's 8 o'clock, which I know is super inconvenient for some of us, or right, like again, they're not, as long as you're not being exploited, right? Like those kinds of things are important. But yeah, it really is sometimes who shows up or just again responds. I don't need to see my undergrads every week right now because they're working on a data set for me, but every Wednesday it's in all of our calendars to check in. I'll usually text them at 8 in the morning. None of them are awake then, just to be clear. But by noon, they've all checked back in on the group thread. And then I say, do we need to meet at 3 o'clock this afternoon? Yes, I would like to come in. No, I'm good, right? Like blah, blah, blah. So that becomes a reciprocal relationship too. I like to call it the all chill and no give back. Sometimes people want everything from you, but they don't want to return anything. And it's never 50-50. But if they'll respond to me by noon and say, I need to come in for our 3 o'clock meeting or I'm good, that's that reciprocity, right? It doesn't have to be like one time this week, one of my students, Becca, goes, I'm good. That was her response. That's fine. She acknowledged that she received it. She acknowledged she's okay working through the data set that they're having to organize for me. And I'll check in with them next week. So sometimes do have to make an effort to meet people where they are. It's never going to be always halfway. It's never always 50-50, but you got to show up. Even if you're like, this person's driving me crazy. I don't feel good, right? Like it's his allergies or a cold, right? Like whatever, but we have to do it. Thank you. Yes.
I guess, I'm sorry if like someone already asked like a similar question, but with like climate change and also like our food systems are quite political
Yeah.
sometimes. And also with like food trends and stuff, how do you see like the agricultural industry like changing and where do you hope it will go?
So I think reality versus Instagram are two very different things for production ag, for food production. So I think what you're talking about. We are going to continue to have issues around climate. I don't care if the government says we're not supposed to use that term anymore. We're seeing more severe weather events, right? Like even if we still got winter here for sure, there's also one of the worst winters we've had in a while, right? Even though it only lasted a month. My parents still like 2.5 feet of snow. Right? They were just standing at a snowbank for fun all day right now. So I don't think that part's going away. I think it's all going to become how do we adapt to it, right? So in terms of like production ag growing food to eat, right now, administratively, we're not making great decisions. Why can we get avocados year round? Because of trade and good diplomacy, right? Like that's it. I can joke about it being sumo orange season because I just bought a bunch yesterday and this morning because I love them and I can pay for them because they're really expensive, but they're my treat once a year. They're $3 a piece. That's why they are sometimes food, but why can we get them? Right, like because of storage, refrigerate, but also because we have good diplomacy with other places and spaces in the world. So I think some of it's political, very much so in terms of like sourcing things, right? Like how come I can get pistachios year round when they only come out once a year? California grows a lot of almonds for the world, we're just used to seeing them and everything. When I go to a foreign country, I always go to a grocery store. So I just want to see what they have. If it's any American, right? Like what was the import tax on that? So I think it's a huge issue. I think for the United States production, it's going to keep centralizing. In college, we used to joke, go big or go home. And we're starting to see that. My parents are small in the whole grand scheme of production. 500 acres is nothing, honestly.
Yeah.
And they know that. And I know that we've always all known that. And so what we're seeing is my parents have already had 2 offers on their farm. One of them that they probably will take is the farm that owns 5,000 acres and wants to add my parents 500 to them because they have the equity and the capital to be able to just go buy that through the bank tomorrow. Whereas someone else who doesn't have that kind of equity behind them, right? Generational wealth, other things they've invested in, won't be able to. So I think we're going to see that continue to kind of get bigger and smaller. The other thing that ag has done, by and large, not necessarily every crop or commodity, is we've gotten really efficient. A good example is when my parents were younger and they bought the farm, our cows were averaging, let's say, 50 pounds of milk a day. Now, through feeding and genetics and better feed quality, the cows are averaging 85 pounds a day. And so we've been able to do that across most of our commodities. When you drive by and see fields of corn or grass for hay, or again, depending where you're from or where you drive through, like soy, pick your commodity, I don't care. Like Iowa with the corn sweat, because it's so hot there from all the corn, it makes it actually the temperature increase because of all the humidity. We've become more efficient at growing. So we can actually grow more food on less land too. So again, it comes into like these political things like housing crisis and not enough supply and demand and mortgage, all those things. It's a system, right? This is a massive system. None of it operates without the other part of it. And so we kind of built our own problem. We got more efficient at growing food for people on less land. And now in a lot of sectors, not all, beef is one of the exceptions right now. We're not getting paid what it's worth. So if we go back to my example with the cows, they're making 85 pounds a day now. The price per hundredweight, it's sold by 100-pound weight, is $17. The price to produce 100 pounds of milk is almost 20. So when you don't have to be a mathematician to go, I'm losing $3 every like 5 seconds, essentially, which is why they're getting out. So again, we have a very big systems issue that we've created, but we're going to continue to see issues around climate, extreme droughts, extreme flood, right? Like these extremes that we're having, and we're either going to figure out if we're going to adapt to it or succumb to it. And we know it's like Norfolk, right? Like is sinking, right? The naval base and stuff out in the eastern shore of Virginia and some other things that again are just happening. We've seen historic floods in like Texas last summer, which was awful because the girls' summer camp. All those things are going to keep happening. Unfortunately, we can adapt, but we're also not necessarily always helping ourselves either. And I mean that societally, not necessarily as an individual. You recycling this plastic bottle is literally a drop in the bucket, right? Compared to data center emissions, right? Like it's a scalable problem.
Well, thank you so
Yeah, thank you
much.
for having me. Thank you all for coming. Happy Lunar New Year.